Emma Rosewood stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows of her Manhattan penthouse, watching the city lights twinkle like fallen stars against the velvet darkness. The wedding dress hanging behind her seemed to mock her with its pristine perfection. 30 days. In 30 days, she would become Mrs. James Whitfield, wife to one of New York's most successful investment bankers. Everything appeared flawless from the outside. The guest list boasted celebrities, politicians, and business moguls. The venue was the historic St. Patrick's Cathedral. The honeymoon would be spent on a private island in the Maldives. Yet something gnawed at her soul like a persistent whisper. The unexpected discovery. The antique secretary desk had belonged to her grandmother, a woman who believed in keeping memories alive through handwritten letters and faded photographs. Emma rarely opened its drawers, but tonight felt different. Tomorrow would bring another round of wedding preparations, more decisions about flowers and seating arrangements that somehow felt increasingly meaningless. The third drawer stuck slightly, requiring gentle persuasion before revealing its contents. Beneath old birthday cards and pressed flowers, her fingers brushed against an envelope that made her heart skip. The paper was cream-colored, expensive, with her name written in familiar handwriting that transported her instantly back to college lecture halls and late-night coffee shops. Oliver Montgomery. The name alone sent electricity through her veins. How long had this letter been hidden here? Her grandmother had passed away 2 years ago, taking countless secrets to her grave. Emma's hands trembled as she examined the postmark. 5 years old. 5 years this letter had waited in darkness while she built a life with another man. The letter that changed everything. My dearest Emma, if you're reading this, then fate has finally decided we deserve another chance. I know you probably hate me for leaving without explanation, for choosing business over our love, for letting my family's expectations drive us apart. But I need you to know the truth. When my father discovered our relationship, he threatened to destroy your family's publishing business. Your parents had just invested everything in that new printing facility. I couldn't let my selfish desires ruin their dreams. I've spent 5 years building an empire, not for money or power, but for the freedom to choose my own destiny. Montgomery Industries is now worth billions, enough to protect everyone I care about, enough to protect you. I've never stopped loving you, Emma, not for a single day. If there's any part of you that remembers what we had, please, find me. I'll be waiting, forever yours, Oliver. The letter fluttered to the floor as Emma collapsed into the velvet armchair. Memories flooded back like a dam breaking. Oliver's laugh echoing across the campus quad, his hands covering hers during Shakespeare. Lectures, the way he made ordinary moments feel extraordinary. Their love had burned bright and passionate until suddenly, inexplicably, he vanished from her life. Ghosts of college romance. She remembered their first meeting in Professor Hamilton's literature class. Oliver had argued passionately about the nature of true love in Romeo and Juliet, while Emma defended the practical aspects of relationships. Their debate continued long after class ended, stretching through dinner at a tiny Italian restaurant and deep into the night as they walked along the moonlit campus paths. Their romance bloomed like wildflowers after rain. Oliver would surprise her with picnics in hidden corners of the botanical gardens, his favorite poetry books marking their favorite spots. He taught her to appreciate fine wine and classical music while she introduced him to midnight movies and street food adventures. The night he first told her he loved her remained crystalline in her memory. They had been caught in a thunderstorm, taking shelter under the library's stone archway. Lightning illuminated his face as he cupped her cheeks, rain dripping from his dark hair. "I love you, Emma Rosewood," he whispered, "with every piece of my soul." She believed him completely. The sudden departure. Then came the morning that shattered everything. Oliver's roommate delivered a brief note saying he had transferred to another university for family reasons. No goodbye, no explanation, No forwarding address. Emma searched desperately, calling everyone who might know his whereabouts. But Oliver Montgomery had vanished as if he never existed. The pain nearly destroyed her. She threw herself into studies, internships, anything to numb the ache of abandonment. Gradually, she convinced herself their love had been merely a college fantasy, beautiful but impractical. She learned to mention Oliver casually in conversations, as if he were simply an old friend, rather than the man who had owned her heart completely. Meeting James 3 years after graduation, at a charity gala benefiting children's literacy, she met James Whitfield. Handsome, successful, charming in a practiced way that spoke of good breeding and expensive education. He courted her with impressive efficiency. Flowers delivered precisely on schedule, reservations at restaurants featured, in culinary magazines, weekend trips planned with military precision. James represented everything her parents deemed suitable. He came from old money, attended the right schools, belonged to exclusive clubs, and possessed the kind of stability that promised a secure future. When he proposed at the Rainbow Room on her 28th birthday, surrounded by roses and champagne, Emma said yes because it felt like the next logical step. The growing doubts. But lately, doubt crept in like fog rolling across the harbor. James treated their relationship like a business merger, complete with strategic planning and expected returns on investment. He scheduled their intimacy around market reports and client meetings. Even their conversations followed predictable patterns covering safe topics that never ventured into dangerous territory like dreams, fears, or genuine emotions. The wedding planning became a production worthy of Broadway, with James's mother directing every detail according to social expectations, rather than personal preferences. Emma felt like an actress playing a role in someone else's story, smiling and nodding while her authentic self slowly suffocated under layers of propriety and convention. The phone call. The sound of her phone ringing shattered the spell of memory. James's name appeared on the screen and Emma hesitated before answering. "Darling, I've been trying to reach you." His voice carried its usual tone of controlled impatience. "The caterer needs final approval on the menu, and Mother insists we review the seating chart once more. The Vanderbilts cannot possibly sit near the Astors. You know how these things work." Emma looked at the letter lying on the Persian rug, its words still glowing in her mind like embers. "James, we need to talk." "Of course, but make it quick." "I have an early conference call with Tokyo investors." The sound of papers rustling filled the background. "I found something today. Something that changes everything." A pause. "Emma, you're being dramatic. Wedding stress affects all brides. Perhaps you should increase your yoga sessions or try that meditation app Mother recommended." The dismissive tone that had once seemed sophisticated now grated against her nerves like fingernails on chalkboard. "This isn't about stress. It's about truth." "Truth?" James's laugh held no warmth. "The truth is we have responsibilities, Emma. 300 guests, vendor contracts, my business associates flying in from Europe. Whatever childhood nostalgia is troubling you will pass." The decision brewing. After ending the call, Emma stood again at the window, Oliver's letter pressed against her chest. The city pulsed with life and possibility below, millions of stories unfolding simultaneously. Somewhere out there, Oliver Montgomery walked through those same streets, perhaps wondering if she had received his message, if she still cared enough to seek him out. The wedding dress rustled behind her like a ghost demanding attention. In 30 days, she could walk down that cathedral aisle, exchange vows that felt increasingly hollow, and settle into a life of comfortable numbness. Or she could choose courage over convention, love over logic, truth over convenience. Her reflection in the dark window showed a woman she barely recognized anymore. When had she started straightening her naturally wavy hair? When had her wardrobe become a collection of beige and navy pieces designed to blend rather than stand out? When had She stopped laughing at inappropriate moments and started calculating the social implications of every word. The Emma who had loved Oliver Montgomery would never have hesitated. She would have already grabbed her car keys and driven through the night to find him. Consequences be damned. That Emma believed in grand gestures, in love conquering all, in the beautiful madness of following your heart even when your head screamed warnings. A glimpse of the past. She walked to her bedroom closet and pushed aside the conservative suits and tasteful cocktail dresses until she found it. A bohemian maxi dress in deep emerald green, purchased during a moment of rebellion she had immediately regretted. The fabric felt different against her skin, softer, more forgiving than the structured pieces that had become her uniform. In the mirror, she looked younger, more alive. This was closer to the woman Oliver had loved, the one who quoted poetry at midnight and danced barefoot in the rain. This was the Emma who had believed love could move mountains and reshape destinies. The letter called to her from the living room like a siren song. She had always prided herself on making rational decisions, weighing pros and cons with careful deliberation. But rationality had led her to this moment, engaged to a man she respected but didn't truly love, about to promise forever to someone who saw her as an acquisition rather than a soulmate. The night of reckoning, Emma returned to the letter, reading Oliver's words again, memorizing each carefully chosen phrase. He had become a billionaire, built an empire, transformed himself into someone powerful enough to protect the people he loved, all for the chance to come back to her. The irony wasn't lost on her. While she had been constructing a safe, predictable life, Oliver had been creating the freedom to choose love over obligation. He had become the man capable of giving her everything she didn't know she wanted, while she had molded herself into someone she barely recognized. The city lights blurred as tears filled her eyes. Tomorrow would bring another day of wedding preparations, another step closer to a future that felt increasingly wrong. But tonight, in this moment suspended between past and future, possibility hummed in the air like electricity before a storm. Emma Rosewood stood at a crossroads, Oliver's letter in her hands, 30 days stretching ahead like an eternity of potential choices. The safe path led to the cathedral, to respectability, to a life of quiet desperation dressed in designer clothing. The unknown path led toward a love that had never truly died, toward a man who had moved heaven and earth for the chance to hold her again. The letter had found her when she needed it most, a message from the universe that some loves are too powerful to remain buried forever. Now she had to decide. Would she have the courage to answer Oliver's call? Or would she let fear disguise itself as wisdom once more? The night stretched ahead, full of infinite possibilities and the weight of a decision that would define the wide rest of her life. Emma woke to sunlight streaming through her penthouse windows, Oliver's letter still clutched in her hand. The events of the previous night felt like a vivid dream until she saw the cream-colored paper, now wrinkled from her desperate grip. Her engagement ring caught the morning light, casting tiny rainbows across the ceiling like a mockery of her confused heart. Her phone buzzed relentlessly with wedding reminders. Final dress fitting at noon, cake tasting at 3, rehearsal dinner menu approval by 5. Each notification felt like a chain tightening around her chest. How could she go through these motions when Oliver's words had awakened a sleeping part of her soul? The investigation. Begins. Emma made a decision that surprised even herself. Instead of attending the scheduled appointments, she called her assistant and canceled everything. "Tell them I have food poisoning," she lied, feeling guilty but desperate for time to think. "Reschedule everything for next week." She needed answers, and she knew exactly where to start. Her grandmother's personal assistant, Mrs. Patterson, had worked for the Rosewood family for 30 years before retiring to a small cottage in Connecticut. If anyone knew about hidden letters and family secrets, it would be her. The drive to Connecticut gave Emma time to process the whirlwind of emotions. She had always trusted her grandmother's judgment completely. Helena Rosewood had been a formidable woman who built a publishing empire from nothing, someone who understood both love and business with equal clarity. Why would she hide Oliver's letter for 5 years? Mrs. Patterson's revelations. The cottage sat surrounded by rose gardens that Mrs. Patterson tended with loving care. The elderly woman's face lit up when she saw Emma, then immediately clouded with concern. "My dear child, you look troubled," Mrs. Patterson said, leading her to a sun-drenched kitchen filled with the aroma of fresh-baked scones. "What brings you here so close to your wedding day?" Emma pulled out the letter with trembling hands. "I found this in grandmother's desk. It's from Oliver Montgomery, dated 5 years ago. Why would grandmother keep this from me?" Mrs. Patterson's face went pale as she read the familiar handwriting. She sank into a chair, suddenly looking every one of her 78 years. "Oh, my dear, I was hoping this day would never come." "You knew about the letter?" "I delivered it myself to your grandmother. Oliver came to the house personally, desperate to reach you. He looked like a man haunted by regrets." Mrs. Patterson's voice carried the weight of long-kept secrets. "Your grandmother read it, then locked it away immediately." Emma's heart pounded. "But why? She loved me. She wanted my happiness above everything. Because she knew something you didn't. Something about your current fiancé that she discovered during her own investigation." Mrs. Patterson rose and walked to an old wooden chest. "Your grandmother was many things, but naive wasn't one of them. When James Whitfield started courting you, she hired private investigators." The hidden files. From the chest, Mrs. Patterson withdrew a thick manila folder marked with Emma's name. "She made me promise to give you this only if you asked direct questions about Oliver or if you seemed unhappy with James. She said you deserved to make choices based on truth, not manipulation." Emma's hands shook as she opened the folder. Inside were photographs, financial records, and detailed reports that painted a disturbing picture of James Whitfield's true character. The man she planned to marry in 29 days was not who he claimed to be. The first photograph showed James at an expensive restaurant, his arms wrapped around a stunning redhead. The date stamp indicated this was taken just 3 months ago. More photos followed. James entering luxury hotels with different women, James at private parties where money and influence flowed like wine, James signing documents that suggested business dealings far shadier than his pristine public image. "Your grandmother discovered that James specifically targeted you," Mrs. Patterson explained gently. "His business was failing, and he needed to marry into a wealthy family to save his reputation and finances. The Rosewood name and fortune were exactly what he required, the web of deception." The financial records revealed the extent of James's deception. His investment firm was hemorrhaging money, kept afloat only by questionable loans from overseas investors. His expensive lifestyle was funded by mounting debt and creative accounting that bordered on fraud. Marrying Emma wasn't just about love or even convenience, it was about survival. "He knew about Oliver," Mrs. Patterson continued, her voice heavy with sorrow. "James deliberately scheduled your first meeting at that charity gala because he had researched your past thoroughly. He knew Oliver had broken your heart, and he positioned himself as the safe alternative." Emma felt sick as more pieces fell into place. James's careful courtship, his practiced charm, even his proposal, everything, had been calculated to exploit her emotional vulnerability and desire for security after Oliver's painful abandonment. "But why did grandmother hide Oliver's letter? If she knew James was wrong for me, why not let me decide?" Mrs. Patterson's expression grew troubled. "Because she also discovered why Oliver left you in college. The threats to your family's business were real, Emma. Oliver's father, Marcus Montgomery, was a ruthless man who would have destroyed your parents to protect his son's suitable future." Oliver's sacrifice. Revealed, The folder contained correspondence between Emma's grandmother and Oliver, exchanges that painted a heartbreaking picture of young love sacrificed for family protection. Oliver had indeed left to save Emma's family from his father's wrath, but the story didn't end there. Oliver spent 5 years building his own empire specifically to break free from his father's control, Mrs. Patterson explained. Every business decision, every calculated risk, every sleepless night was aimed at gaining enough power to protect the people he loved. Your grandmother was impressed by his dedication but worried about the cost. Emma read letter after letter, from Oliver to her grandmother, each one expressing his love for Emma while detailing his progress toward financial independence. He had never dated seriously, never formed lasting attachments, remaining devoted to a woman who believed he had simply abandoned her. Your grandmother wrestled with this decision for months, Mrs. Patterson continued. She saw Oliver's genuine love, but also witnessed how you were healing, building a new life. She feared that delivering his letter would reopen wounds that were finally closing. The phone call that changed everything, as if summoned by their conversation, Emma's phone rang. The caller ID made her heart stop. Montgomery Industries. With shaking fingers, she answered. Emma? Please don't hang up. Oliver's voice was deeper than she remembered, roughened by years of business negotiations and sleepless nights. I know, this is unexpected, but I needed to hear your voice. How did you get my number? I've been watching from afar, making sure you were happy and safe. I know about your engagement, your wedding plans. I should congratulate you, but I can't bring myself to lie. His voice cracked slightly. Did you ever receive my letter? Emma looked at Mrs. Patterson, who nodded encouragingly. I found it yesterday, hidden in my grandmother's desk. A long silence stretched between them, filled with 5 years of missed opportunities and unspoken words. I'm coming to New York, Oliver said finally. Not to interfere with your wedding, but because you deserve to know the whole truth before you make vows to another man. The secret meeting. They agreed to meet at the Met Museum, in the sculpture garden where they had shared their first kiss during a college trip to the city. Emma arrived first, her heart hammering against her ribs as she waited among the marble statues that had witnessed their young love bloom. Oliver appeared like a figure stepping out of her dreams and into reality. 5 years had transformed him, from an earnest college student into a powerful man who commanded attention without effort. His dark hair now showed distinguished silver at the temples, and his eyes held depths that spoke of struggles overcome and victories hard won. Emma. He spoke her name like a prayer, his gaze drinking in every detail of her face. You're even more beautiful than I remembered. They walked through familiar halls, past paintings that had once sparked passionate discussions about art and life. The years between them gradually dissolved as they rediscovered the easy conversation that had always been their foundation. I need you to understand why I left, Oliver said as they paused before a Monet landscape. My father threatened to destroy your family's publishing house. He had the power to do it, Emma. Your parents had invested everything in that new facility. I couldn't let my selfish desires ruin their dreams and your future. The full truth. Emerges Oliver revealed the extent of his father's manipulation, the threats that went beyond business into personal destruction. Marcus Montgomery had been prepared to fabricate scandals, destroy reputations, and use every weapon in his considerable arsenal to separate his son from what he saw as an unsuitable match. I spent 5 years becoming powerful enough to protect everyone I love, Oliver continued. Montgomery Industries is now worth $12 billion. I have influence in every major market, connections that span the globe, and enough resources to shield my family and friends from any threat. Emma listened in amazement as he described his transformation from dependent son to independent powerhouse. Every business deal had been a step toward freedom, Every success a building block in the fortress he constructed around his heart and his values. But the cost was you, Oliver admitted, his voice breaking. I lost you, Emma, the only thing that ever truly mattered to me. James's true nature exposed, as if the universe conspired to reveal all secrets at once. Emma's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. The message contained a photo that made her blood run cold. James leaving a hotel with the same redhead from her grandmother's investigation files. The timestamp showed it was taken just 2 days ago. More messages followed, in rapid succession. Photos of James with various women, audio recordings of conversations where he discussed Emma in calculating terms, treating their relationship like a business acquisition. Someone was systematically destroying James's carefully constructed facade. I didn't send these, Oliver said quietly, reading the shock on her face. But I'm not surprised someone is finally exposing him. Emma's phone rang. James's name appeared on the screen, and she almost didn't answer. When she finally did, his voice carried a panic she had never heard before. Emma, darling, there are photographers following me. Someone is trying to sabotage our wedding with fake images and recordings. You can't believe anything you see or hear. The confrontation. Are they fake, James? Emma's voice was steady despite the turmoil in her heart. Because I have evidence suggesting otherwise. A long pause. When James spoke again, his tone had shifted to something cold and calculating. Where are you? We need to discuss this privately. I'm exactly where I need to be, Emma replied, looking at Oliver, who stood ready to support whatever decision she made. The question is, where have you been, besides hotel rooms with women who aren't your fiancé? Emma, you're being hysterical. Wedding stress can cause... Stop. She cut him off, her voice growing stronger with each word. I know about your failing business, your debts, your need for the Rosewood fortune. I know you targeted me specifically because you researched my vulnerabilities and exploited them. The silence that followed was deafening. When James finally spoke, all pretense had vanished. Fine. You want truth? Here's truth. Oliver Montgomery is a ruthless businessman who destroys everything he touches. He left you once, and he'll leave you again when something more profitable comes along. The weight of decision. Emma ended the call and turned to Oliver, who had remained silent throughout the conversation. The sculpture garden around them felt like a sanctuary removed from the chaos of real life, a place where truth could finally breathe freely. He's not entirely wrong, Oliver said quietly. I am ruthless in business. I have destroyed companies and careers to protect what matters to me. But I would never destroy you, Emma. You're the reason I became powerful enough to be ruthless when necessary. The weight of choice pressed down on Emma like a physical force. In 28 days, 300 guests would gather in St. Patrick's Cathedral, expecting to witness her marriage to James Whitfield. Contracts were signed, deposits paid, lives arranged around an event that now felt like a performance rather than a celebration. But standing here with Oliver, feeling the electricity that still sparked between them after 5 years of separation, Emma realized that some connections transcend time and circumstance. The love they had shared wasn't just college nostalgia. It was the foundation upon which both their lives had been built, even when they were apart. The plan unfolds. What happens now? Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Oliver stepped closer, his hand reaching up to cup her cheek with infinite tenderness. Now you decide what kind of life you want to live. Safe and comfortable with a man who sees you as a business asset, or uncertain but authentic with someone who loves every complicated, brilliant, beautiful part of who you are. The wedding is in 28 days, 300 people, international guests, business connections. We'll understand if the bride chooses love over obligation, Oliver finished. Emma, I'm not asking you to run away with me tonight. I'm asking you to give us a chance to rediscover what we had and see what we might become." As they walked out of the museum together, Emma felt as if she was stepping into a new version of her life, one where truth took precedence over appearances, and love mattered more than security. The afternoon sun seemed brighter, the city more alive with possibilities. But the hardest part still lay ahead, dismantling a life built on comfortable lies and finding the courage to embrace an uncertain but authentic future. The girl who had once loved, Oliver Montgomery, was still alive inside her, waiting to be set free. 28 days to decide between the woman she had become and the woman she was meant to be. 28 days to choose between safety and passion, between what others expected and what her heart demanded. The clock was ticking, but for the first time in years, Emma Rosewood felt truly alive. The 28 days that followed Emma's meeting with Oliver passed like scenes from a fever dream. She moved through wedding preparations like an actress playing a role, smiling at dress fittings while her mind replayed every conversation. With Oliver, nodding at flower arrangements, while remembering the way his eyes had lit up when he spoke about their future possibilities. James seemed oblivious to her internal transformation, treating her distraction as typical bride nerves. He threw himself into finalizing business details with increased intensity, making phone calls that grew more desperate as his financial situation deteriorated. Emma watched him with new eyes, seeing the calculating manipulator behind the charming facade. The society photographers continued their relentless documentation of what they called the wedding of the century. Emma's face appeared on magazine covers with headlines proclaiming her the luckiest woman in New York. If only they knew the truth about her inner turmoil. Secret communications. Oliver respected her need for space while the wedding machinery churned forward. But he found subtle ways to remind her of his presence. A single white rose appeared at her office every morning with no card, but Emma recognized the gesture from their college days. Books of poetry materialized on her desk, passages underlined that spoke of love transcending time and circumstance. Most meaningfully, Oliver arranged for scholarships to be established at their old university in both their names, supporting students from underprivileged backgrounds who showed exceptional promise in literature and business. The gesture demonstrated how he had never forgotten their shared values, their dreams of using success to help others climb higher. Emma found herself torn between two versions of her future. One path led down the cathedral aisle to security, social approval, and a life of quiet desperation masked by luxury. The other path led into uncertainty with a man who had spent 5 years proving his devotion through actions rather than words. The dress rehearsal, 3 days before the wedding, the full wedding party assembled at St. Patrick's Cathedral for the final rehearsal. The massive Gothic structure, with its soaring spires and stained glass windows, should have filled Emma with awe and anticipation. Instead, she felt like a sacrificial offering being prepared for some ancient ritual. James's groomsmen were a collection of investment bankers and corporate executives who spoke in numbers and treated the rehearsal dinner like a networking opportunity. Emma's bridesmaids, college friends who had grown distant as their lives diverged, seemed more excited about the designer dresses and celebrity guest list than celebrating their friend's happiness. "You look pale, darling," James murmured during the ceremony walkthrough. "Perhaps you should increase your vitamin intake. We can't have you looking tired in the photos." Even now, 3 days before their wedding, he spoke to her like a business asset requiring maintenance rather than the woman he claimed to love. Emma smiled mechanically while internally screaming at the hollow performance they were all participating in. The final revelation. That evening, at the rehearsal dinner held in the Plaza Hotel's grand ballroom, Emma received a message that changed everything. Her phone buzzed during James's toast about strategic partnerships and mutual benefit, words that made her stomach turn. The text was from an unknown number, but the message made her heart race. Look up. Emma's eyes swept the ballroom until she found him. Oliver stood in the doorway, devastatingly handsome in a dark suit, his presence commanding attention even in a room full of New York's elite. He had somehow gained entry to the exclusive event, a testament to his newfound power and influence. There, eyes met across the crowded room, and Emma felt the familiar electricity that had always existed between them. Oliver nodded slightly toward the terrace doors, a subtle invitation that spoke of urgent need to communicate. The garden conversation. Emma excused herself during the dinner service, claiming she needed air after James's particularly suffocating speech about their perfect partnership. She slipped through the French doors onto the hotel's private garden terrace, where Oliver waited among the carefully manicured roses. "I'm sorry for coming here tonight," he said immediately, "but I couldn't let you take those vows without knowing something crucial. Oliver, you can't be here. If James sees you, James already knows I'm in New York. He's known for weeks." Oliver's expression was grave. "Emma, he's been having me followed, my business deals investigated, my past relationships scrutinized. He's not just afraid of losing you, he's afraid of losing access to your family's wealth and connections." Emma's blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" Oliver pulled out a tablet, showing her financial documents that painted a devastating picture. James's company isn't just struggling, it's involved in money laundering for offshore accounts. The federal investigation started 3 weeks ago. He's marrying you to create a legal shield, using your family's reputation to legitimize his operations. The truth about James's desperation. The documents revealed a web of illegal activities that went far, beyond simple business failure. James had been funneling money through fake charitable organizations, using his social connections to facilitate tax evasion schemes for wealthy clients, and accepting payments from individuals with questionable backgrounds. "The FBI has been building a case for months," Oliver continued. "They're waiting until after your wedding to make arrests, hoping to gather more evidence about his accomplices. Emma, if you marry him, you could be implicated as an unwitting accomplice." Emma sank onto a stone bench, the weight of revelation crushing her chest. "How do you know all this?" "Because they approached me when they discovered I was investigating. James independently. I've been working with federal agents for weeks, providing information about his business practices and connections." Oliver's voice carried pain and determination. "I couldn't let you walk into legal jeopardy along with emotional destruction. The final ultimatum." As if summoned by their conversation, James appeared in the terrace doorway, his usually perfect composure showed cracks. His tie loosened and his eyes wild with barely controlled panic. "How touching," he said, his voice dripping with false calm. "The failed artist comes crawling back to steal my bride 3 days before the wedding." "I'm not stealing anything," Oliver replied evenly. "I'm offering Emma the truth about the man." "She's about to marry," James laughed harshly. "Truth? You want to talk about truth?" "Let me tell you about Oliver Montgomery's truth, Emma. He's been stalking you for 5 years, using his billions to manipulate situations, placing people in your life to report back to him. He's obsessed, not in love." Emma looked between the two men, seeing them clearly for perhaps the first time. James, desperate and cornered, willing to say anything to maintain control. Oliver, calm and strong, letting his actions speak louder than words. "Is that true?" she asked Oliver quietly. "I've kept track of your well-being from a distance," Oliver admitted. "But I never interfered with your choices or manipulated your relationships, until now when your safety became an issue." The wedding day decision. The morning of the wedding arrived gray and overcast, as if the sky reflected Emma's inner turmoil. The Plaza Hotel suite buzzed with activity as hairstylists, makeup artists, and photographers prepared for the event. That would transform Emma into Mrs. James Whitfield. Emma sat before an ornate mirror, watching strangers apply layers of cosmetics that transformed her into someone else entirely. The woman in the reflection looked perfect, polished, and completely hollow. This wasn't who she was meant to become. Her mother, Helena Rosewood Jr., swept into the room carrying champagne and radiating excitement. "Darling, you look absolutely radiant. The photographers are already positioned at the cathedral. The governor just arrived, and I hear 3 ambassadors are in attendance." "Mother," Emma said quietly, "what if I'm making a mistake?" Helena's perfectly styled eyebrows drew together. "Wedding jitters are perfectly normal, sweetheart. Your father and I had doubts too, but look how wonderfully everything worked out." Emma knew her parents' marriage was more business partnership than love story, built on mutual respect and shared social goals rather than passion. They were content, but not truly happy, living parallel lives that intersected at charity galas and family obligations. The dress that felt like armor. The wedding dress hung like a specter in the corner, $20,000 of silk and crystal, beading that felt more like armor than celebration. Emma had chosen it because it was expected, because it photographed well, because it sent the right message about the Rosewood family's status and taste. Now, looking at the elaborate gown, she remembered the simple sundress she had worn the day Oliver first kissed her. She had felt more beautiful in that $30 dress than she would in this designer creation because she had been truly herself, authentically happy. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called, expecting another wedding coordinator, with last-minute details. Instead, Mrs. Patterson entered, looking elegant in navy blue silk. The elderly woman carried a small, wrapped package and an expression of gentle determination. "I have something for you," Mrs. Patterson said, closing the door behind her. "Something your grandmother wanted you to have on your wedding day." Grandmother's final gift inside. The package was a simple gold locket that had belonged to Emma's great-grandmother, a woman who had scandalized society by leaving her wealthy but loveless marriage to run away with a penniless artist. They had built a happy life together despite social ostracism and financial struggles. "Your grandmother wore this when she married your grandfather," Mrs. Patterson explained. "She said it reminded her that love requires courage, and courage requires choosing truth over comfort." Emma opened the locket to find 2 photographs. One of her great-grandparents on their wedding day, radiating genuine joy despite their simple clothes and modest surroundings, and one of herself with Oliver during their college years, laughing, together at some shared joke. "Your grandmother placed that photo there 5 years ago," Mrs. Patterson continued. "She said if you ever needed reminding about what real love looked like, you should see yourself through the eyes of someone who loved you completely." The cathedral moment, St. Patrick's Cathedral, filled with 300 of New York's most influential people, their designer clothes and expensive jewelry creating a sea of calculated elegance. The massive organ played traditional wedding music, while photographers captured every detail for society magazines. Emma stood at the back of the cathedral in her $20,000 dress, her father beside her offering his arm. Through the Gothic arches, she could see James waiting at the altar, looking every inch the successful businessman he pretended to be. The music swelled, signaling the beginning of her processional. Emma took one step forward, then another, each movement feeling like she was walking underwater. The faces of the guests blurred together as she moved toward a future that felt increasingly wrong with each step. Halfway down the aisle, she saw him. Oliver sat in the back row, having somehow gained entrance to the exclusive ceremony. He wasn't there to stop her or cause a scene. His presence was simply a reminder that alternatives existed. That choice was always possible, even at the last moment. The moment of truth. Emma reached the altar where James waited with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. The bishop began the ceremony with traditional words about love, honor, and commitment that felt like accusations in the sacred space. "Dearly beloved," the bishop intoned, "we are gathered here today to join James and Emma in holy matrimony. If anyone knows of any reason why these two should not be wed, speak now or forever hold your peace." The cathedral fell silent except for the whisper of expensive fabric and the distant sound of New York traffic. Emma felt the weight of 300 expectations pressing down on her, the social machinery that demanded she go through with this performance. Then she thought about her great-grandmother, who had chosen love over security. She thought about her grandmother's hidden wisdom and Mrs. Patterson's loyal truth-telling. She thought about Oliver, waiting 5 years for the chance to prove his love through actions rather than words. Most importantly, she thought about herself. Not the polished society bride she had become, but the authentic woman who deserved to be loved for who she truly was, rather than what she represented. "I object," Emma said quietly. The words seemed to echo in the vast cathedral space. A collective gasp rose from the assembled guests as Emma turned to face the crowd. "I object to this marriage," she said more loudly, her voice growing stronger with each word. "Because it would be a lie. Because I don't love James the way a wife should love her husband. Because I deserve better than a relationship built on calculation and convenience." The grand escape chaos erupted in the cathedral as Emma lifted her expensive skirts and walked back down the aisle. James called after her, his voice cracking with panic and rage, but she didn't look back. The guests sat in stunned silence, unsure whether to follow or stay seated. Oliver was waiting by the cathedral doors, his car running at the curb. Without a word, he opened the passenger door for her. Emma paused for one moment, looking back at the life she was leaving behind, the security, the social approval, the comfortable predictability. Then she climbed into Oliver's car and felt truly free for the first time in 5 years. The new beginning. They drove through Central Park as the gray morning gave way to brilliant afternoon sunshine. Emma rolled down the window and let the wind destroy her perfect wedding hairstyle, laughing as bobby pins scattered and her natural waves returned. "Where are we going?" she asked, not really caring about the answer. "Wherever you want," Oliver replied. "I have a plane fueled and ready. We could be in Paris by midnight, or California by sunset, or we could just drive until we find somewhere that feels right." Emma looked at the man who had spent 5 years proving his devotion, who had built an empire for the chance to protect her, who had respected her choices even when they broke his heart. This was what love looked like, not control or manipulation, but freedom and possibility. "Let's go somewhere we can start over," she said. "Somewhere we can remember who we used to be and discover who we might become." The tropical paradise. 3 days later, Emma and Oliver walked hand in hand along a private beach in the Caribbean, the crystal-clear water lapping at their bare feet. Emma wore a simple white sundress purchased at a local market, her hair loose and sun-streaked. She had never felt more beautiful. The media frenzy back in New York had been intense but brief. James's arrest on federal charges had overshadowed the scandalous wedding cancellation, and Oliver's legal team had managed their privacy expertly. Emma's family had been initially mortified but ultimately supportive, especially after learning the truth about James's criminal activities. "No regrets?" Oliver asked as they watched the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. Emma turned to face him, seeing the man who had loved her enough to let her go and patient enough to wait for her return. "Only that we lost 5 years we could have had together." "Then let's make sure the next 50 years count double," Oliver said, dropping to one knee on the warm sand. The ring he produced was nothing like the ostentatious diamond James had given her. Instead, it was a simple band of platinum set with a single perfect sapphire, her birthstone, chosen with love rather than for display. "Emma Rosewood," Oliver said, his voice rough with emotion, "will you marry me for all the right reasons? This time, Not for security or social approval or family expectations, but because we choose each other every single day. The true wedding. 6 months later, Emma and Oliver exchanged vows in the same sculpture garden at the Met Museum, where they had rekindled their love. The guest list included only the people who truly mattered: Mrs. Patterson, Emma's parents, Oliver's business partner who had become like a brother, and 20 close friends who had supported them through the journey. Emma wore her great-grandmother's simple wedding dress, altered to fit perfectly and carrying the weight of family history and authentic love. Oliver's eyes filled with tears when he saw her, and Emma knew she was finally marrying the right man for all the right reasons. Their vows were personal promises written from the heart, speaking of partnership, growth, adventure, and unconditional acceptance. When Oliver slipped the sapphire ring onto her finger, Emma felt complete in a way she had never experienced with James. The happily ever. After 2 years later, Emma and Oliver sat in the library of their restored farmhouse in the Hudson Valley, watching snow fall softly outside the windows. Emma's architectural firm now specialized in sustainable housing for low-income families, while Oliver's foundation funded arts education programs in underserved communities. Their love had matured into something deeper than the college romance. They had shared a partnership built on mutual respect, shared values, and the hard-won wisdom that came from choosing each other despite obstacles and alternatives. Emma often thought about the letter that had changed everything, the grandmother who had hidden it with complex motivations, and the courage it had taken to walk away from a life that looked perfect from the outside but felt empty within. Love, she had learned, wasn't about finding someone who completed you. It was about finding someone who inspired you to become the most authentic version of yourself. Oliver had loved her enough to sacrifice his own happiness for her protection, then loved her enough to fight for their second chance when the time was right. As she curled into Oliver's arms by the fireplace, Emma knew that some love stories take time to unfold properly. The best ones require patience, courage, and the wisdom to recognize truth when it finally reveals itself. Their story had taken 7 years and countless obstacles to reach this moment of perfect contentment, but every struggle had been worth it for the joy of choosing love over fear, authenticity over appearance, and each other over everyone else's expectations. The letter that started it all now rested in a frame on their mantelpiece, a reminder that sometimes the most important messages come to us exactly when we need them most, even if we're not quite ready to receive them. Love, Emma had discovered, was always worth the wait.